That's true. That's true.
And you're like, yeah, no, right?
I'm very gestural when I talk, so.
Yeah. Or like people tend not to like keep the altitude of their mouth consistent to be with the microphone.
I will try to do all of those things, Benson.
All right, cool.
How's that?
Yeah, it's pretty good.
God, pretty good. I'm like really close.
Yeah. Yeah,
even closer?
I think,
is this better?
No, it's completely fine.
Oh, okay.
I think
I can smell the microphone. Like
with the way I'm speaking, I might be just a smidge farther from the mic than you, but I'm peaking like around like the negative 14 decibel range, and you're just about there.
Okay. So. Do you want to give me like a sign when I guess I'm too loud? Just like go like this, and I'll like bring it down.
I would say, like the manner in which you're speaking right now, it is good. And if you were to say raise your voice just a little bit, it'd be like going
even
up.
Better.
It'd be going up. You'd probably be peaking the microphone.
Oh, okay. So maintain this.
That one laugh you did where good practice is like if you're laughing, throw your head back.
Okay.
You know what I mean? If you're laughing particularly loud, throw your head back.
Okay. So this is good.
Yeah, it is completely fine.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Happy to hear. Gonna take a drink of water now.
That is. So how have you been? I hear you have a tiny human.
I do have a tiny human. He's great. He's awesome.
Oh, it is a boy.
It's a boy, and his name is Nawel.
Nawel?
Yes, Benson. Thank you. Thank you for pronouncing it correctly, because so many people have butchered his name already. I tell my husband, I'm like, what did we do to our child? But his name he has a strong name, so yeah.
Where does that come from, Nawel?
It actually comes from Argentina. It's from the Mapuches. It's a Mapuche name. Mapuches are one of the largest indigenous groups in Argentina. I'm half Argentine. My husband's Argentine. There's like a whole legend behind the name, but essentially it means jaguar.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but it's also symbolic for empathy and compassion and the friendship between animals and men.
Right, okay.
And women.
Okay. And what does your husband do?
He's actually in the automobile industry. He's the regional manager of after sales for Audi.
Okay.
So he works for corporate, and he travels like all around the New England area. Yeah, it's pretty exciting. It's so very different from what I do, but he's really passionate about it, and it was great because his hobby. He likes to work on cars, and essentially he's married his hobby with like his career.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
And when this goes up, would you rather I refer to you as Ines Rivera or Ines Rivera-Prosdocimi? Whatever. What is that?
Prosdocimi. You can just call me Ines Rivera. That's fine.
Is that is? You hyphenated your husband's last name with yours? Or?
No, that's actually... So Prosdocimi is my mother's maiden name.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so that's like actually my full last name. That's the name that I publish under. I like to give props to my mom.
Okay.
Since she is such a big influence in my life. My dad, too. My mom is, my mom.
Is that... I don't... Forgive me if I'm ignorant. But I didn't recognize Prosdocimi as like a very, say, Latin name or.
It's actually Italian.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. So my mother's father and grandfather were Italian. It's actually pronounced Prosdocimi. Mm-hmm. But as when people move and they assimilate, the pronunciation sometimes, or even the spelling of last names can change.
Okay.
So it's actually Italian from the north, from a place called Belluno in Italy. Cool. Yeah.
Cool.
Can I ask you questions?
Yeah, it doesn't matter what you do.
Oh, really? I mean, I'm thinking this should be like it's more of like a conversation.
Yeah,
right?
it's just us talking. It doesn't have to be about anything at all.
Oh.
I could have spent this whole like an entire hour not even like mentioning that you have a doctorate in comparative literature or anything, or we could just spend the whole time making each other laugh or talking about pickles.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Cool. Can we like talk about like what you did this summer?
Yeah.
So what did you do?
Well, I was podcasting people. So.
What did you get out of that?
Well, as people read the description of the podcast, the reason I'm doing this is to feed my curiosity, connect with people, and sometimes get out of house.
So did you make any like interesting connections like this summer via the podcast?
Yeah, like the first few people I had on were like friends of mine who work in like as photographers and stuff, and or professors from my community college, and we just first of all, as friends, we just caught up, but also we got into like deepish conversations about like our relationship to the arts and what it means in modern times.
What does it mean?
I'm not sure.
Had to.
Is anyone sure?
I don't know. I think that there's that saying that art is supposed to incite.
Yeah.
It's supposed to challenge people's thinking, or at least their point of view. On some level, it should. I think it should inspire you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think why do you think that it's questionable now? I guess, the function of art?
Well, I only have my experience to draw from, but to me, art is the most important thing to me. Earth without art is just and
yeah, it's true.
So it's just it's the thing that the entire umbrella of arts and entertainment. It's the thing that like gets me up in the morning. Really, that and anger and anger at myself for pursuing arts. But
ooh, what's that anger about?
Well, so you read that personal essay I wrote that won awards last year, right?
Yes.
There's some. Well, so when I was young, I was very much intent on this plan of like going to hard sciences and stuff. At the time, I wanted to be an astrophysicist. And at some point, I became disillusioned with that and, found arts. And I figured that's what I want to do. Those are the only things that ever really mattered to me, arts and entertainment. But as a child of immigrants, the usual itinerary they might have for their children is don't do the arts. You should study something like business, economics, or marketing, or do something, earn a degree in something that's rather practical so you can, earn money and survive. On some level, I feel this guilt that it's sort of a selfish pursuit because I don't want to help other people, if you know what I mean. Like, there are people who like they major in like nursing or social work, or they join the Peace Corps or something like that, and they're actively trying to help people, and because that's what they like to do, what gives their life meaning. But in my case, it's like I want to be an artist, and I feel weird saying that, but I feel that is the description with the path of least resistance to get the message across. But I guess I want to be an artist. But
don't you think that in that pursuit of art, you're trying to connect with people and you try to help people through art? At least you try to incite something in people through art. I'm not just talking about visual art, but film and literature and.
On some level, like I had a conversation with a friend of mine about how you could think of it as it is servicing other people. It's giving them entertainment, like in the form of film or music and such. But it's still, I think of it as a rather selfish pursuit because I'm just like, there are people who really do want to do things that make a difference, that matter. And then I'm like, I like watching movies and playing guitar.
But I mean, I guess it would depend on the content of the film and or a text. Because oftentimes, you know, if I think about the work that I do, if I think about what I teach, I like to expose my students to, for example, like poetry of witness. Mm-hmm. So poetry that on some level documents an experience, maybe an experience that was silenced, like a genocide, for example.
Right.
And I think in that very much is in the service of people, and that very much is also kind of activism too. I'm also a painter, and although my paintings, they're not activism, you know, but on some level I'm trying to connect with people through what I depict, right? Whether that is just kind of changing their perception of art or what constitutes art, or just making beautiful art. Yeah. So I think I guess it would depend on the content of like what you want to create and why you want to create it.
Well, the stuff I want to make is whatever it comes out to be, you could say. I don't think I'll ever intentionally or make an agenda of me like putting some kind of political message in my work or anything I do, because it feels like if I were to make a record and the songs were very political and like very overt and not subtle about it, that would feel like a betrayal to whoever would be listening. Because in the end, when I look at a record and I'm just like, this is just music to listen to because I like to listen to music, that feels like an aspect of the music I didn't ask for. You know what I mean? Unless I were actually looking to say go to grab a record by like Bob Dylan's "The Times They Are Changing." That was, you know, that's really him singing about political upheaval and social change during that time. But if I were to like go to a show and they start spouting all this political whatever, I'm like, I don't want to hear this. I came here to see the show. I don't. If I were to like make records like that, I wouldn't want to be so overt or forward with a message, because it feels like you're. It's almost like you're attacking whoever's listening, because you're encroaching upon their listening experience. You're like, I want you to hear this, even though, you know, first things first, music. I listen to music because it's fun to listen to, not because I want to hear what your thoughts about whatever.
But music always has a message.
I mean, so even sometimes it doesn't.
Sometimes it doesn't. You're right.
I mean, there's stuff I listen to that's really fun and interesting, but the lyrics can be nonsense. Like, you ever listen to Beck?
Yeah.
Yeah, like the song "Loser" or "Where It's At." I got 2 turntables and a microphone. Or Jigsaw Jazz and Get Fresh Flow. I'm like, yeah, he's not really singing about anything, but I don't care. Or rather, he's rapping in those songs.
Yeah, I'm thinking of, you know, my brother actually DJ. So, you know, when I hear that lyric, I interpret it totally different. It's either he's about to create a party or he's about to create a revolution.
Yeah, they do.
So I guess I think it depends on the content. Sure. Yeah. I don't really like things that are so overtly political, either. But sometimes I think, a text or a piece of music or a film that's not actually overtly political can be like the most political piece of art, you know, when it doesn't actually bop you like over the head. But in any case, you know, even if the piece of music is just, for example, about, I don't know, feeling good, or I'm going to give you an example. It might be actually a really bad example, but I remember when I was studying art in the Dominican Republic in Alto Sechabon, we would go to this bar called Papa Jack's, and they always played reggaeton. And this is like when reggaeton hadn't even hit the U.S. market. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking, well, God, what's the value of this music? Like it doesn't say anything. It's all about, I'm going to dance. I'm going to feel like I've got this girl, and sometimes it really just doesn't say anything. And one of my good friends, my friend Jesus, he was like, Ines, sometimes music is just to dance to. And there's this idea, there's this sense that, and I got it, like sometimes you just kind of want to dance to a nice beat. And that's how you're kind of creating this connection with other human beings. The lyrics might not say anything, but it might be awesome to dance to.
Yeah.
And I think that, because when I think of art, we usually think of it as being this kind of individually created thing. When there's always, I feel like this reciprocal nature to it. I don't know about you, but I don't make art so that it just kind of exists as a canvas in my basement. I'm always making art to share it with people, whether that's like my poetry, whether that's like more critical pieces, whether that's a painting. Ultimately, I'm usually kind of doing it for other people, but in a really inadvertent way. So I might write a poem about something that struck me in the news, or I might write a poem about somebody in my family, or just an experience that kind of struck me that I thought was interesting. But I always think that there's this kind of intention that I would like at least some feedback on it, right? I would like somebody to read it. I would like somebody to see my painting, because I'm wondering if they're going to see something that I don't. For me, art always has that kind of reciprocal nature to it. If a film, you want people to watch it. A piece of music, you want people to listen to it or hear it or dance to it. Even if it's not like going to change them, like at least momentarily that song's going to get them to dance and feel good for about 3 minutes.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, it goes back to my presupposition that my pursuit of art is inherently selfish, because in the end, I see most things as like a musician. Like if you expect anything from music, you expect too much. In the end, I play music and I write music first and foremost for myself.
Yeah.
And if other people happen to like it, if they happen to find it and like it, then that's great. But it is more for me to get inside of this art form I love so much, music, but also see if I can, say, write songs, compose like scores of my films, and it's more for me to see if I can do it and if it fulfills me.
I get that.
Yeah.
I'm the child of two immigrants too, and I think what's really interesting with my parents is that my parents had 4 kids, and we couldn't turn out any different. But my mom always told me that you have to study something that you're passionate about. I could break myself like studying accounting, right? Because accounting pays the bills. But that's not what I'm passionate about. And ultimately, having a career at that would be a really painful career if I'm not really being fulfilled by that. And I understand, like, there's, we, at least in my family, if we didn't study something like medicine or something practical, we were going to go all the way in terms of schooling. You got your bachelor's, and then my parents would be like, well, now you can get your master's. Well, now you can get your PhD. Because the idea was that at least if you had that education, you would have at least, more prospects, right? More economic stability, if that. My sister always has this saying, like when she's comparing us, because I'm a twin, she says, you always respect your path. Meaning, when I went to college, I studied fine arts and creative writing for my bachelor's, because I couldn't imagine studying, biology or engineering. I wasn't passionate about it, but I also kind of, at a very early age, I knew what my strengths were. They might not be the most practical, maybe. But, well, this is my whole point. You know, maybe you're meant to, maybe if you feel like this inherent selfishness in your art form, and, you know, maybe to some extent that's true, but maybe that's kind of the path you need to walk so that you do actually have that kind of stability, because stability comes in a lot of different forms. It's, you know, it's not just economic stability. There's a whole lot of like aspects to it. Psychological stability, emotional stability, you know, so that you can be like a better whole person. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
The great thing is that I really liked entomology and geology in my undergrad. And sometimes I'm like, I should have been, you know, oftentimes I think I should have been a doctor. If you think about it.
You are a doctor now.
Well, I am a doctor.
Not that kind of doctor.
I mean like an MD. Yeah, like I'm a doctor, but I'm not like an MD, because sometimes I like you, I think I feel like I could be of better service to people and have that kind of, I guess, security, or we'll call it security, if I were like an MD. But also because if you think about being a doctor, it is kind of like an art form in itself.
Sure.
I have this like friend who's a surgeon, and she's a plastic surgeon. And I don't think it's a coincidence that she paints too.
Yeah.
She actually does reconstructive surgery.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, like if a kid has a cleft palate, or if somebody has like a really bad wound on their face, like she's the one that fixes them. And I think that's interesting to think of, you know, to think of how she is like this doctor, and we might think that it has nothing to do with fine art, and yet she creates these beautiful paintings. I don't know where I'm going with that, but, well, I always thought that I was like, you know, if I could do it all over again, I should have been a doctor, because maybe if I had the idea that I could pursue two things simultaneously, then maybe I would have taken more chances, right? But I think fine art and writing is enough for me. Plus, I can't take the blood, you know, and that goes back to me respecting my path.
I think in my case, it's more about not wanting to. If I were to get like a degree and proceed with a career in something that, quote unquote, that's real, then I'm like, I would feel me pursuing arts and stuff is me trying to not grow up, if you know what I mean.
Oh.
I'm currently 23. I got my associate's degree at 22 with a vision for me to pursue arts. And now I'm in a process of earning a bachelor's with like 3.5 programs worth of requirements that I will have to complete in 4 years, because that's how long my scholarship lasts. I feel like that's me again trying to put off like becoming an adult.
Oh.
You know, like you finish, like if you were a normal person, you would
that word.
You would earn your bachelor's at 22, but then you're like you feel that like the world's kind of sinking in, like, I have to like be an adult and like get a job, or I can like stay in school and get like a graduate degree. You know what I mean?
You know what's funny is I feel like we're kind of conditioned to reach these benchmarks. You know, you come out of college, you come out of high school, you go to college. College is 4 years, and then afterwards maybe you do grad school, and then afterwards maybe you get married, and then afterwards you get a house, and all of that, right? That there's these like little benchmarks that we're supposed to meet. And I think like eventually people realize that, you know, we're all so different that there's a lot of different ways to kind of reach an idea of success, or reach an accomplishment. I'll give you an example actually from my life. You know, my sister right now, she's really thinking about having kids, you know, and she just got engaged. We're twins.
Your identical twin sister?
We're identical twin sisters. Yes. And, you know, Pat's like, oh, you know, I should have done this. I should have done that. You know, she has a PhD in sociology. She studies the implementation of domestic violence laws in Argentina and Brazil. And she's been living in Brazil for 5 years. She's lived in a lot of different places. In my dad's country, the Dominican Republic, my mom's, Argentina. She spent some time in the West Bank. She's lived in Puerto Rico. Mm-hmm. She has a master's, she has a PhD, she dances, she does Afro-Cuban. So she has like these two avenues that she's always had to kind of find a balance between her academic and professional life, with her dance life. Right. And I always tell her it's dangerous if you're going to pick one, because that's how she's fulfilled. But now she's looking at everybody. They have families, like they're on kid number 3. They buy houses, they have this kind of economic security. And she thinks that somehow she went wrong. Yeah. But I tell her, how many people do we know that have accomplished everything that she's accomplished? How many people that we know, have really quite literally traveled the world, or, have learned 3-4 languages. Not a lot, and I think there's like a lot of value in that. My whole point is that somehow my sister thinks that she's gone wrong because she didn't hit the benchmarks when she was supposed to hit the benchmarks. Yeah. Or she hit a different benchmark, instead of, I don't know, getting married and having kids after college or after a master's, she traveled the world and she studied in different places, and she quite literally lived in different cultures. Yeah. And that's my pep talk to her. I'm like, just because you didn't hit these benchmarks when you were supposed to, or maybe you hit them earlier, or you just did it in a different way, that doesn't make, your journey or what you've done any less valuable.
I feel like people shouldn't really, we always have this idea of we're supposed to have graduated from school at this age, to get married at this age, have kids by this age. But like, I don't ever plan to like get married or buy a house, or again, it's like me trying to stave off adulthood. I only, for one, I can barely take care of myself. I can't take care of other people. And so me pursuing stuff like arts, it's me trying to, it's all about me. It's all about me trying to make sure I can be fulfilled by myself with the things I'm doing, and not because I'm supposed to be doing these particular things, like get married, have kids, buy a house. And, it's no, go ahead.
Benson, it's selfish, but it's necessary. What I mean by that is, if you're not happy, then there's no way you can attract happiness, and then there's no way that it's going to affect how you connect with other human beings. But this point about I don't know, I guess like not wanting to face adulthood, I don't really know when adulthood happens. I really don't. Look, I just had a kid, and I thought that then I was going to definitely feel like an adult. And no, I still don't. What's really interesting about artists, if you see their work, you take an artist like Picasso, you take an artist like Miro. So many of those artists, if you see the trajectory of their work, they always go back to childhood. There's something about that period in time that's like magical, and it's full of wonderment, and it has a lot of energy around it that kind of instigates more art. I don't think it's a coincidence that you have like an artist like Picasso who can do very, very, who can do realism, right? And who has different periods in his life. But he ends up in this like kind of in this period of like childhood. That's like this last like art period. I don't think that's a coincidence. And now that I've actually had a child, I was reading about this the other day. A baby, the amount of work that a baby's like brain is doing, we lose it by half over our lifetime. Like the connections that a baby is making.
The neuroplasticity?
Yes. Well, it's good. You just put it a lot better than I did. We lose that by half over the trajectory of our lives, meaning their brains are, I almost feel like their brains are far more advanced than ours. And, when I have interactions with kids, I'm always like, wow, man, they're so much smarter than adults. I feel like adults, like they have the benchmarks. They have these preconceived notions. They have these opinions. They, that almost in many ways, set them back.
Yeah.
I can't remember who said this to me, but they were like, you like to play. You like to play a lot in the way that children play. We were talking about my poetry, and I was like, oh, I never thought about it that way. But yeah, for me, a poem in a weird way, it reminds me of doing math in 2nd and 3rd grade when I wanted to get the right answer. And I knew that if I just moved around some numbers, or if I played with the formula, that maybe I could get to the end well. That's how I feel when I do poetry. That's how I do feel when I make art. There's a kind of spontaneity to it, but then there's also like this kind of method to it.
Yeah.
It's like a puzzle that I'm trying to figure out, and I'm enjoying actually the process of figuring it out, much like a child.
Yeah. And for someone who was so predisposed to math and science when I was younger, I really wish that carried over to other areas like, say, reading and analyzing literature. I would like to formally thank you on record for teaching me how to read last semester.
Thanks, Benson.
Because when it was, I had like advanced English courses in high school and stuff, but I never learned. We would read literature, but we would never read into the literature. When kids are reading books, literature, they're almost reading for plot. They're only reading for what's happening, like what happens, the events that in the plot line, so they can pass their test.
Yeah.
But they're not really looking into what lies beneath and what other things the literature could mean other than what happened in the plot.
Yeah, that's surface stuff.
Yeah.
The plot stuff is the surface stuff.
Like I remember when we were reading Farming of Bones in our world literature class, there was a day when I had read this section rather cursory-like, and it was, I think, T, Chuck, and Joe were presenting on that section of the book. And
the Sugar Woman? Was it the Sugar Woman?
I can't remember, but it was something about rivers, and I found myself, I was really surprising myself with the connections I was making about those sections of the book in the moment of our discussion. I was throwing out like several things per page.
I remember that actually.
And I felt it was like my brain was on fire probably because I didn't have much sleep that night. But also it was just like they kept coming to me. I'm like, what the hell is this? The way you taught close reading and literary analysis, it rewired my brain and fundamentally changed the way I look at texts. And now I find I can quote unquote read now. And
that's why I read. That's why I write. That's why I paint, actually, because for me, an author putting together a story is very much like a painter painting a painting.
Yeah.
I'm trying to connect the dots. Why is this image repeated? What are we doing with this character? Is this just a secondary character? Why is there so much like romanticism around a character? Why does a character say what they say? I love that. And in a weird way, it makes me feel like I'm in like 2nd grade.
Yeah.
1 + 1 is 2. Okay. I think I've got it. Oh my God, fractions.
Yeah.
It gives me that kind of, it gives me that energy.
Yeah.
It's like a pursuit.
Yeah.
It gives me that sense of pursuit. And I get that sense of pursuit even when I'm painting because I'm like, where are we going with this?
Yeah.
But I need to trust the process. And it's just not as so defined if I think of like STEM.
Yeah. And when sure, I enjoyed reading stuff when I was growing up, but it wasn't until like my very first kind of foray into literary analysis and really being fascinated by it was when like I read Catcher in the Rye, and I would look up interpretations and videos of analysis of the text, and these like realizations people would have, these connections to draw from, where you realize how the subtext comments on the text itself that really blew my mind, and it made me like excited to read and analyze literature. And so I think that was the point during which I almost always had English as an interest of mine to study, because I just figured, well, for one, I don't think I could tolerate studying anything other than film or English. But also, sure, I like reading, and there's more to it than reading.
You know, it's interesting of what you said. You also commented on, you kind of underscored the sense of community and how you can kind of make these connections by having like discussions.
Yeah.
So it's not so solitary. I mean, I get it. Yeah. I mean, it's, okay. Making art is, I feel like, could be inherently selfish, but it's not always such a solitary act too. And it does kind of instigate these things like discussions, and you talk to people and you notice things that they notice, and that kind of influences how you're interpreting a film or a text or a piece of music. So it goes back to like my previous comment in terms of the kind of reciprocal nature of art. Mm-hmm. Inevitably, yes, you're creating it on some level for yourself. But
also when people interpret it, they're creating meaning for themselves.
Yeah, that's true. That's true too. But again, there is this kind of interaction that you're having on some level. For example, you write to an audience, right? You're always conscious of an audience or a reader.
Yeah.
Or a viewer, actually. I should mention that. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I say.
I also would like to thank you for teaching me how to write. Because
gosh, Benson, you're really giving me too much credit.
Well, I mean, it's just that, again, with like reading and literary analysis, it was never really laid out in a way that could make me understand what it meant. And now I realize I can write papers in a way that makes sense and that is rather easy for me, because in the end, you're just telling people what you think about text. That's literally it. You just have to be able to attach it to the textual evidence and guide them through your thought process behind the point or claim you're trying to make about the text.
Oh, I was going to actually say that point about guide. But you got it, Benson. You got it.
Like, I wrote a paper for Mark's class on Milton. Mm-hmm. I was able to get like a page and a half analysis from a single word.
Yeah. Yes. Mm-hmm. That was a good class.
Yeah.
I bet that was a good paper too.
It was great. Yeah. I got an A in class.
Yeah. It's funny, whenever I give like the close reading assignment, like especially to like for example to like an intro to lit course, mm-hmm. They're like, "Wait, so you want me to write 3 or 4 pages on 3 or 4 sentences?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, if you do the work, you have more than enough meat.
Yeah.
But they're always shocked at that first mm-hmm. assignment, because it inevitably will lead you to having to do the hard work of, well, why did they use this term? What's going on? These two terms, they kind of contrast. Oh, there's like this use of repetition. That's got to be something that I can talk about inevitably, because you have such a short amount of text to work with.
Yeah.
But it always like scares them in the beginning.
Well, I think you have to go soon. So
gotta go soon, Benson.
I wish we could talk more, but
me too.
Oh, well, yeah, have this up in a way. You can probably come back later, but
yeah.
So you could become like,
we could do like a follow-up podcast.
Yeah, I haven't had anyone come back yet, but it could just be like Ines Rivera returns, and we just talk about other stuff.
It could be me.
Yeah,
I'll be back.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Benson.
Cool.